Thank you very much for the very strong coffee. Meghali, a great keynote speech, and really makes me happy to be a Muslim American. We are young, we are educated, we are employed, we've got gender parity. One piece you forgot was we're also very good looking. If you don't trust me, meet my friend Adnan Durrani, sitting right here. So I think, it's really very encouraging to be here today. If you read the press and you watch TV, there's a lot of negativity around Muslims in America. And today when I look at this, it reminds me of the Charles Dickens novel when he starts off saying that it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. I think we face a little bit of that. While there is some negative sentiments around our community, I think still it's pretty robust. And while I agree with Meghali that you can't really do accurate analysis of the size of the population, if you look at the numbers that the Dinar Standard has put together, as well as the study that Cornell did a few years ago, it's roughly between 6 to 8 million people in the US who are considered American Muslims. And if you take a look at the consensus survey that Cornell had done a few years ago, they said that by 2014 this number will double. So that's a pretty sizable chunk of the population. Also, the second fact is that the demographic that we're targeting is actually a younger demographic. 67% of Muslim Americans are under 40, so that's great. I'm sure I mess up that average slightly. Still, it's a pretty good average to have. Also, it's an educated consumer. So all of the different surveys that we've seen outline that it's an educated the socioeconomic aspects of this community as well as their buying power. And again, the Dinar Standard numbers that are in the publication outline it's about $97 billion of annual spending. That's a lot of money, which means again it's a good community to look at and figure out whether you need to do something different to market to them, or you just treat them as Americans and market to them the way you market to anybody else. Then the last key factor that I would like to outline is that these people are professionals, which means that the issues that they face and the consumption patterns that they have are of professionals. And the range of professions vary. You've got dentists, you've got doctors, you've got professors, you've got engineers, you've got bankers. It's a pretty diverse range of community. But they're predominantly professionals, which means that the way they consume goods is very sophisticated, which means that the way you need to reach out to them matters as well. So to shed some more light on these, I have a very esteemed panel of speakers who bring different perspectives to the table. My own background, I've spent the last 18 years working in the media industry in the US. I used to run the entertainment industry practice for IBM Global Services and then for KPMG Consulting. A few years ago I started a company, MediaMorph, which tracks and measures digital media consumption across 200 different outlets in about 20 countries. And we work with television and media companies to tell them how is their content performing across all of these platforms. So please join me in welcoming my esteemed panel of speakers. Steve Pilchak, who is the General Manager of Best Buy. Abdalhamid Evans, who is the Managing Director at Imarat Consultants. And Nazia Hussain, who is the Director of Cultural Strategy at Ogilvy and Miller Worldwide. Thank you for joining us this morning.
This community is a very, very good person.
I guess somebody did not have enough coffee. So the way I would like to start the session, Steve, starting off with you, if you can provide a brief introduction, your background, and just share your perspectives on what do you think of the American Muslim market? Is it a different demographic or is it an American demographic? And what does Best Buy do differently to address this?
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Pilchak. I've been with Best Buy for about 11 years now. And I think my piece may be a little different just in the sense that about 4 years ago, I became the general manager in the Dearborn, Michigan store. Coming into this community, the first thing we realized, or that I realized, was that we really hadn't done a good job yet and needed to begin to, in terms of doing something different. And as our company has evolved and come along, what we've really done that's, I think, different is we've gone to a localized marketing strategy that really is just centered around diversity and inclusion, and around creating an experience for our customers and our employees that's different and that is unique to the customers in which we serve. So from there, there's a video that will be queued up that really kind of tells our story and tells what we've done. And really is, again, finding creative, unique, and different ways to connect with our customer base and to connect with our employee base in a way that that serves them and serves their needs and doesn't come to or come across as what we think. More so, it's what we've been told through asking questions of what those customers want or what our employees want and what we can do for them.
Great. I think there's a brief video that you'd like to play.
American business, so people from the Middle East, like Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, a lot of Egyptians too, and Jordanians.
They came for the big three to work, to make a living. That's basically why they came, is because of the factories that were here in Detroit.
It's that American dream, I guess, that people seek and dream about to achieve. It's this notion of being American by choice.
I'm American first and Arab second. Even though I was born overseas, I came here. This is my kids. I'm gonna raise my kids. They're gonna go to college here. Hopefully they will make me proud, but this is my country.
We feel and we see ourselves as an integral part of this great American mosaic of color, race, and faith.
There's respect for young and old, and there's love and good food and holidays, and there's sadness and hard work and struggles. That's what I see our culture is.
It's different when you actually speak to a Muslim rather than just like seeing what you see on TV. One out of how many wonderful Muslims is giving us all that bad name, and it's just not fair to us.
It seems like any incident that's happening with the Arab culture, it's always an Islamic radical. They always bring the religion factor into it. Religion's inside of a person. You follow what you want, not the people around you.
It's about accepting each other, talking to each other, and seeing our common bond as humans together.
Come sit with me for a few hours with my family, and we'll let you judge us after having been with us.
When we realized that we had an absolute need to get better at serving the community, ultimately we realized that we had to hire from that community. By the time we were done, we had about 20 to 25% of the store being bilingual.
They come in and they just want to speak to somebody who's Arabic. Just by speaking the same language, they feel more comfortable and they feel more at home and at ease.
Once we got that employee base in, that's when I really learned about the culture and the community.
Education is the key. Believe me, if we open our hearts to each other, you will find that the connection of the minds is there, that our commonality is more than what makes us apart.
العرب بنحب نلبس على راسنا ونتسطر ونصوم ونصلي. She said we have in our Islamic, we cover our head for modesty, we fast and we worship God, and we pray.
I think the employee experience, one of the reasons it is so high, especially with our employees, is because we do recognize their needs.
My managers told me to bring in my prayer rug, keep it in the SDR in the office, and whenever I need to pray, just go there and take a break. It takes like 5 minutes, and you pray, and you come back out and attention.
And that really just created a huge buzz in the store and in the community.
And then when I found out we were getting like Arabic lettering to go on the keyboards as well, different kind of transformers for overseas, basic, really little things like that makes me love working for this company.
They told us what to go after. In most cases, they built the plan. They executed the plan. All they wanted was some guidance. The culture is very, very loyal, but also shows appreciation and likes to see appreciation.
You give me good service, quality service, I give back. And this is where we create this mutual respect and loyalty.
You have very knowledgeable workers. When you're looking for something, they can actually help you. They're not trying to push the highest priced product to you. They're just trying to get you a product that meets your needs.
When I get customers that come in that are Arabic speaking, I develop a relationship with them that they can pass on to others.
They do tell all of their friends, they do tell all of their family, and a lot of times they will personally bring them in and find their salesperson and kind of do a handoff for us or a hand to.
You know, it's like family. You ask anybody there on any, any floor, ask them for any help, make sure you like your family.
And that's what people come in because they feel like they're talking to a friend. It's like, oh, I'm going to come back to you, you're my friend now, you can help me out with anything, and you build that kind of relationship with them.
Every community is unique, and the only way we're going to figure that out is if we have very good and honest conversations with our customers and our employees, specifically asking what can we do within the community and how can we have an impact.
It's very impressive. I love Best Buy. If I weren't here right now, I'd probably be at a Best Buy store. I'm a big gadget freak and you guys have great stuff. Our second speaker today, Alhaj Abdalhamid Evans, has a lot of experience working globally in promoting and creating halal as an industry. Mr. Evans?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning. Just to give you a little bit of background about me, I'm Abdalhamid Evans. I became a Muslim in 1978 in England, and that was a moment that really marked an enormous change in my life. In the years that followed that, I worked a lot in community and social welfare projects, dawah projects, trying to work with the reality of being an English Muslim living in a non-Muslim country. And then in 2002, I found myself working on a project in Malaysia, and at that time the Malaysian government were developing a program to enhance their whole halal industry and to look at how the development of the halal sector could be an engine of growth in their national economy. And while I was there, I got involved in various media projects, such as the Halal Journal magazine, and also with the development of the World Halal Forum, which was really the first of its kind as being an industry forum for the commercial entities in the halal sector, in the halal food sector. And then also we went on to do consulting for the Malaysian government to look at how they could incorporate halal into as an engine of growth in their own economy. Since then, I've been back in Europe and also in the United States for the past 2 or 3 years, and looking at the way that the halal industry and this whole idea of marketing to the Muslim community, and who are they and what do they want and what are their needs and preferences and how do we communicate with them. And I also run a website called halalfoods.com, which is a news site for the halal industry. And what I've tried to do today is really, I've taken the title that I was given in a very literal manner, and I've really looked at the media realities that we live within. What are those media realities and how do they affect us? And to look at the analytical strategies that we can engage with in order to move forward. So those are some of the things that I'll be talking about this morning, which are.
Thank you. Last but not least, Nazia Hussain. Very impressive background. Born in Bangladesh, grew up in Saudi Arabia and Hong Kong, educated in England, learned Chinese, and now is focusing on marketing to Muslims. Nazia?
Thank you. Is this one? Thank you, Shahid, and assalamu alaikum to my fellow panelists, the organizers of the AMCC, and ladies and gentlemen in the audience. It's a great pleasure to be invited here today to share our thoughts from Ogilvy at the second American Consumer Conference. If I could please ask that our slides be put up on screen, that would be great. Thank you. As some of you may have heard, Ogilvy was launched earlier this year in May, and is, we believe, the world's first Islamic branding consulting practice. It is housed within Ogilvy and Major, and staffed by senior Muslim communications professionals across our network, based out of hubs in Kuala Lumpur, Karachi, Dubai, and London. Earlier this year, if we could go back to the first slide, please. Thank you. Earlier this year, we published a study based on 2 years of global research conducted in Egypt, Malaysia, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia, and it was called Brands, Islam, and the New Muslim Consumer. It received a very enthusiastic welcome in the marketing world, and our clients have found it of much value at a time when actionable and progressive thinking about the Muslim consumer market is of extraordinary use. On the back of the success of this first study, we plan to look at key minority Muslim markets in the future. Those are the markets in which Muslims form a minority of the population. We hope to look at the US, the UK, France, Germany, and India. In the meantime, however, we have conducted a very small piece of exploratory research online amongst a wide sample of American Muslim consumers. Indeed, some of you may have been kind enough yourselves to respond to our survey request, for which I thank you. What I'm going to do this morning is to share with you some of the key findings of this piece of research. We've heard a very rich and robust portrait of the lives of Muslims in America painted for us earlier this morning by Magali from the Gallup Center, which I personally found incredibly interesting and informative. What I'd now like to do is focus our attention on the way in which these American Muslims behave as consumers. The results I will show you point the way to some clear lessons for American companies and brands seeking to engage with the Muslim community. Lessons that I will touch upon briefly towards the end. A fuller version of these findings is actually available in a published paper entitled A Little Empathy Goes a Long Way, and that's available to take away from the Ogilvy or stand outside for anybody who's interested. Now on to the findings. If we could go on to slide 2, please. Thank you very much. I suppose my first slide comes as a little surprise to the Muslim consumers amongst us. Being Muslim affects consumer behavior, period. It is the extent of that significance that has really struck us. People often ask us, why Islamic branding? Why not Jewish, Hindu, or Catholic branding? To them, this piece of data will prove instructive. A full 97%, the green portion, of American Muslims agree that religion affects their consumer behavior, with over half saying that this is always the case. 28% say that this is the case most of the time, and 15% say this is the case occasionally. Only 3% of American Muslims we surveyed felt that being Muslim did not have any impact on the choices that they make as consumers. I would argue that this centrality of Islam in consumer behavior is one of the things that binds together an American Muslim population that is otherwise, as Magali reminded us this morning, incredibly diverse, both ethnically and politically. Now let's have a look at how our respondents felt about American companies and brands today. As Shahid reminded us, the picture is mixed. It is not always just a happy story. 86% of our respondents felt that brands need to understand Muslim values better, and almost 60% felt that American companies don't respect the Muslim consumer enough. It is clear that there is a lot of work to be done. And yet perhaps what is most striking is how much there is a desire for that gap to be filled. Everyone we spoke to said they wanted to see more action. Whilst an overwhelming 98% of our respondents felt that most American companies do not actively reach out to Muslim consumers. That's the chart on the left. If you look at the chart on the right, you see that there is a correspondingly large large group at over 80% who say that they wish brands would engage with Muslims more and better, through, for example, the celebration of religious festivals. This is a sad state of affairs. Just because it isn't being done doesn't mean that there isn't a need for it. Clearly, there's an opportunity for American brands and companies to pick up their game. So we wondered whether anyone was doing it better. Over half of our respondents felt that Islamic branding, or branding that is empathetic to the Muslim consumer needs, is being conducted better outside the US than within it. What's interesting is the way in which the older and younger age groups differed in their responses to this question. The older group, those between 35 and 65, felt that it was probably being done better outside the US, but many of them felt that they did not know enough to judge. The older group are on the left of the screen, and the don't know section is the red part of the chart. The younger group, however, were much more informed. Far fewer of them felt that they didn't know, that's the red bit, and 63% were sure that brands outside the US were doing a better job. What this means is that there is a more informed stance amongst younger Muslim consumers. This is the group for whom we coined the term the futurists in our previous research. We believe that they are the ones who will really shape the way brands need to engage with Muslim consumers in the future. They are now starting to hold American brands to higher standards, standards that have been set by brands across the world, not just in America. As we know, as Magda reminded us this morning, the American Muslim consumer population is young. The young field of Islamic branding itself has been to date shadowed by apprehension, felt by brands who are afraid to get it wrong. Of course, I'm not going to pretend that there are no costs. The costs can be very high, as we all know. If a brand were to alienate or offend Muslims in any way, a full 98% of the consumers we spoke to would stop using it completely, with over 65% doing so even if the available alternatives were not as good. 33% would stop using it, especially if there were equally good alternatives available, and only 1.6% would continue buying the brand anyway. The case for getting it right is obviously enormous. And there is longevity to these perceptions as well. As we know from the case of Nike, whose design in London in 1996 is still regularly mentioned by Muslim consumers in our work today, 15 years on. These figures are even more alarming when you consider the enormous power of word of mouth or peer influence in Muslim communities, which tend to be highly collectivist and highly relationship-oriented. 83% of our respondents said that they would inform their friends and family about what they knew of the brand's behavior, with only 17% making a private decision for themselves only. What this means for brands is that talking to a single Muslim consumer is often, in reality, talking to an entire community, and communications must therefore be much more cognizant of this fact. So what can brands do if they find themselves in such an unfortunate situation? Well, there are ways out of it. In fact, there are ways to regain one's credibility to a point that's higher than preceding any kind of crisis. What we see is that 42% of our consumers would like brands to provide more public support of Muslims in the future. 55% want brands to apologize clearly to the Muslim community. But the largest number of consumers want to see a demonstration of genuine understanding of what the brand has done wrong. There is a clear shift here. A simple apology is not enough anymore. What we see is that real informed understanding must back up any apology that is made. Otherwise, it appears tokenistic. So what do consumers themselves want to see more of? Well, we gave them a few attributes for brand behavior to look at. And we said, which ones of these would you like to see more brands and companies do? And they said, very clearly, these are the few attributes that they would like to see much more of. I don't know if you can actually read the text on the screen, but the list of attributes is basically wanting companies to make more of an effort to understand Muslim values, wanting a wider range of products and services more suited to their needs, wanting brands to help them feel more included in the wider community, not a marginal group, wanting brands to respect Muslim values more, wanting companies to be unafraid to support Muslims in public, and wanting companies to clearly demonstrate their understanding of Muslim values. as well as wanting companies to play a supportive role in the development of the Muslim community. We have identified 4 broad themes here. These are, I feel, are the key areas of need that brands really need to understand and talk to. The 4 themes that emerge are understanding and respect, tailored provision of goods and services to suit Muslim consumer needs, inclusivity, not marginality, and last but not least, fearless public support. What I'm going to do now, if I still have time.
All I can say is it's a tough crowd, these American Muslims.
But they're very good looking.
Please go ahead.
What I'm going to do now is just quickly go through these 4 key themes that I think brands need to be answering a lot better than they are today. And I will support them with a couple of examples of people who are doing them quite well today. The first is understanding and respect. First of all, what we believe at Ogilvy is that brands must clearly understand Sharia values, or the values that are core to being a Muslim. Sharia we define as a mental and moral compass of good Muslim behavior. The values of Sharia include respect, honesty, community, transparency, accountability, and humility. These are all values that Muslims are familiar with the world over. Brands must make the effort to understand these values, and then they must want to demonstrate that understanding in their behavior and their communications in a consistent manner. In our research, Walmart was mentioned as an example of a brand that respected Muslim consumers enough to invest in understanding them. They opened a superstore that catered specifically to the needs of the local Arab American population, and they were very much involved with the needs of the community in the design and the design of the product and the actual offer in the store. The results were